why is there not enough conversation, or why is there not enough solutions? Because I feel like if you were to say this to like a large group of people, not everyone's going to agree with you, but a lot of people will be able to say, I agree.
I think if there's any kind of analysis of sociologists that we can learn, it's that one's personal lot in life stems from larger macro forces. How do we also analyze why people, especially in America, in the US, have this tendency to think of individual, their lot is due to individual circumstance or due to their bad choices. Large language models is a type of bossware. It is, a thing that is about power centralization, about...
So when you say you want to talk about labor, what's been on your mind lately about labor? Kind of give me the introduction to some of your thoughts.
Yeah. I'll back up and just say, I want to talk about labor and I want to talk about work because I think that's how I think about a lot of this stuff. And it's interesting too, because I think I spent a lot of my, let's say, political adolescence thinking about labor and doing labor activism. And so, when I was in college, I was doing labor activism with United Students Against Sweatshops. And then when I entered into grad school, got really quickly involved with my graduate union, became co-president the second year of my grad program. And then we ended up taking over the Capitol building, the Wisconsin State Capitol, when Governor Scott Walker, he took away collective bargaining rights for state employees, or tried to. And so we, ended up, occupying the Capitol for 3 weeks, and then we got kicked out. And then, that was a huge fight. It was a huge movement.
Why is there not enough conversation, or why is there not enough solutions? Because I feel like if you were to say this to like a large group of people, not everyone's going to agree with you, but a lot of people will be able to say, I agree, or that sounds pretty honest, pretty earnest, even with some of your sources and citations. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's...
Yeah. There's a lot. I think this is a big question. There's so much in this question, right? There's, why do people not think collectively? Why do people not think structurally? Why do people not think sociologically? And this reminds me of my, conversations just as a sociology instructor, teaching sociology 101, which is kind of like, well, let's think about what C. Wright Mills calls our sociological imagination, that a lot of individual problems or individual ways in which we experience the world are because of how they're connected to larger structures or larger social happenings. And I think if there's any kind of analysis of sociologists that we can learn, it's that one's personal lot in life stems from larger macro forces.
Sure.
And a lot of the conversations that we'll have, in teaching is, well, how do we promote these conversations, and like how do we also analyze why people, especially in America, in the US, have this tendency to think of individual, their lot is due to individual circumstance or due to their bad choices, right? And I think there's certainly things that are due to bad choices.
Sure.
People make bad choices all the time. And, but then, a bad choice in America can be catastrophic, whereas for somebody that is, not white, who is lower class, like all these different things and the ways that people are multiply marginalized just make it that much worse. And then, in a different context, it might be, well, you made a bad choice and now like you still have health insurance or whatever. And so I mean, there's so much, I think, in trying to think through why we have that, and some people draw it back to like the notion of why America's so individualistic,
Mm-hmm.
like, we have this kind of ethos of rugged individualism. Some people tie it back to education. I mean, we have a terrible education system. A lot of people tie it back to, like what kind of incentive structures there are to be individualistic. And, they're all not wrong. They're probably not all 100% right. I mean, there's also a way there that there's a confluence there. And so I think, I'm of the belief where in situations where you get people together, and especially working people together, and you present analysis like this, they're like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I actually 100% agree,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I actually think that this is, that's actually right. And so I have an advanced degree, sure, but a lot of the stuff that I learn, especially on the labor front, comes from working people
Mm-hmm.
and comes from people that have, worked together, who've like banded together and then have, you know, basically come to many of the same conclusions through their own lived experience.
Mm-hmm.
That, well, we understand that there's all this speculation. We understand that um, these fiscal devices are just, they're just smoke and mirrors that are able to skim some off the top.
Yeah.
We understand that Mr. Man at private equity firm is more interested in selling our firm for parts that he can get more money than reinvesting in it and having something that would, say, provide jobs in a community or provide a helpful service in light of a certain market niche. And so, you know, and I think you can see this in a lot of different areas. I mean, one 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 industry I was researching a little bit more for the book was journalism. And so
Mm-hmm.
journalism is one of those industries that has a pretty explicit public service.
Yeah.
Local journalism, especially.
It also has a pretty explicit like human aspect,
Yes, yeah,
right? Like from a human to a human. I feel like if AI started to do journalism, it would be
yeah,
even more kind of like what the fuck,
yeah,
because were you there?
yeah,
How do you know what I'm saying? How do you
yeah.
know that
Well,
was said, right? Like
exactly. Well, it's exactly that's what's happening too with a lot of local journalism, where you
it's
know,
turning to AI
yeah, oh yeah, like it's bad,
for
like
for editing or for
for
initial like
everything.
accounts.
For everything.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot. There's AI companies for journalism. There's Google. We talk about this in the book where Google had a pilot for for an AI program that, if you were a journalism outfit or a publication and you partnered with them, they would grant you access to this tool that somehow ingested all these local records and somehow produced these articles, but you would be on the hook for producing 3 articles a day for them, and in so many articles, and then that's wild. That's so many different articles,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and there's no way you could be reporting those out thoroughly,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and journalists that have time to report out these things, I mean, they're not publishing that much. They might be publishing one thing a day, if that. Sometimes if something lands because it's been in the pipeline, then they can push out something else in a day. But there's no way that they can do something like 3 or 4 articles a day.
Mm-hmm.
That's just trying to
And it'd
do.
be meaningful, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's just doing search engine optimization. That's just trying
Mm-hmm.
to get eyes and trying to get ad dollars. And I mean, so when you talk about this in these terms, when you
Mm-hmm.
talk about this, like, and I think like with any sufficient, group of people that I think are together and they've got either common workplace or common management, that they see what they're doing and it's working against their interest. What I think, when that information is available or when they have an
Mm-hmm.
analysis
Mm-hmm.
that they're coming to together, it can be a really powerful thing.
Mm-hmm. So what's your best advice to people who are like, you know what? I'm 16, I'm 18, I'm 21, I'm 25, I'm 30, and I'm interested in technology because of whatever reason. But I don't know how to get involved because it's either going too fast or there's no really good advice of like where to start. Like people are now like, oh, just learn vibe coding. You don't actually need, like real coding. And it's like, first of all, that's a fucking lie.
Yeah.
Please don't do that.
Yeah.
Like actually learn the language, C++, learn Swift, learn, like Python, all of that. But what's your best advice for people who are coming to that moment of realization that I want more from this technical world that seems to be impacting me. I want to take part in it more, either from a career or even from a passion standpoint.
Yeah.
Where to start?
What an interesting question. Yeah. I mean, the best kind of technology I think we have as people is relationships. I mean, I know it sounds hokey.
No, go with it. I'm curious.
It sounds hokey, but I mean, it's the kinds of things that I think have always been critical and are going to always be critical is how you connect with people and how you, and then the second thing is, really being curious about process. So those are the two things that I think really, that's what I'm kind of thinking about. And let me go into both a little bit. So let me give some background on myself, just is kind of preempting maybe some of the listeners. Like I'm a neurodivergent person. Like I'm autistic. I'm ADHD. Connecting to people is often not my strong suit. I try, to push and, have to do a little bit of masking to push, my social skills to where they are. But it's also for the fact that I think in really, really talking to people, and I think you brought up, Cassandra, like staying curious is also very important. So really trying to understand where people are and where they're at and what makes them do that, what makes them tick. And I mean, I think that's a kind of technology is like honing that in a way. I mean, I'm being very expansive in the notion of technology because it is more of a human technology.
Yeah.
And that's never going to go out of date. And then also wondering what the processes are. So, I mean, it's never about the outcome. The outcome is, if you're focusing on outcomes, you're never really going to stay involved and understand what it took to get there.
Sure.
And this is true in so many realms of life, right? But it's really been something that I think has come to a head with large language models and diffusion models and different things that get looped into the umbrella of generative AI. Because they're saying, well, I'm going to vibe code this, or I'm going to, come up with a solution, or come up with, or write a paper, or write some copy, or, and that's not, well, those aren't necessarily skills that are going to be evergreen, right? And there's a few people that I've been working with, a few people at Dare, about doing stuff around like AI and what that kind of resistance looks like too, because I think a lot of people have been trying to say, well, what can I do?
They're trying to activate.
Yeah.
And I feel like they don't know what's the best. It's this combination of, I don't know what's the best way I can get involved, whether that's like use of my time or like effectiveness per hour that I devote. But there's also just kind of like this level of like skill, which is like, what can I actually do?
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, there are people that are trying to activate. And I don't want to say like, if you don't give them something to do soon, you could lose a lot of them. But I do feel that people can easily get discouraged during this time. So anyways, talk a little bit about that, like resistless? Like what does that even look like? Or
Well, I mean, I think it's still in formulation, so I don't want to speak out of turn,
sure.
but I think there's like, I think it's tying to a lot of the ways in which people are upset about things like data centers. They're upset about things like um, AI being imposed on them at their job, of
Sure.
like disrespecting their labor or expecting to do less with more. Do more with less. I wish you do less with more. Do more with less. The ways in which there's other parts of life that are getting commodified.
Or just also like the threat. I think one of the things that has been the most shocking and like egregious to me are these, and I'm going to speak very specifically outside of like labor, but really like when I think about AI and what was happening in South Korea with these like almost like secret chat rings of like people who were taking pictures of their family members, mainly women, and using that for like deep fakes.
Oh, yeah.
And then using that to either blackmail or bribe or just completely humiliate them in these sort of like deep fake videos. And like, so back to that sort of generative AI, or photos that in cultures that, you know, it's very important to kind of remain respectable, doing all of these different things. And I'm not even talking about just like pornographic human to human content. It was also, you know, animalistic, sort of like sadist type of things that were ruining people because of these deep fakes. And it was taken from a picture of when they went to the beach as a family, or when they went to, you know, the theater for a night out.
No, I mean, absolutely. Those are just nightmarish and
so there's all levels of of concern around
100%. I mean, there's a lot. And even in those scenarios, I mean, those are, you know, what are you doing there, right? And I mean, there's been a few different pieces of legislation, you know, to try to address that. And I mean, even those are like, you know, what are you going to do necessarily? So, I mean, I think like there's, you know, like, I think it feels insurmountable, you know, like in all these different places, whether it's, you know, the regime kidnapping neighbors off the street, or, you know, these types of harms coming from, you know, a data center being built in your backyard, or polluting. And I mean, what is, you have this, it's, you know, this, it's supposed to be one person versus Amazon. And no, I mean, I think that's the kind of thing where it's, what are these ways in which what are these ways of collectively acting together, and I think trying to find some kind of way. And I think that's the hard element of it, right? I mean, that's the difficult part of it. I mean, that's the kind of work that is very difficult to do, and we often don't get training on how to do this, you know?
But I think it comes back to what you were saying about the process. Like it's the hard part because it is the disassemble the radio, break it open, figure out how it works, right? It's the part of like, it's the long division, but it's not impossible. And I feel like sometimes, you know, difficult and impossible get, you know, like conflated with like, oh, well, there's like, what can we really do? There's really nothing we can do. And then actually, I really like, not that it was like a solution for everything, but I really like that that's a strong starting point of like, well, can you understand why this thing is here and what it's preying on? And can you go at what it's preying on and understand, like just lift the hood and kind of play with it and understand how it's preying on it and what it's doing and why it's fulfilling needs, right? Because once you do that, then you can maybe start to say, oh, okay, well, like, let's just diverge from that solution to this one right here. Or let's, you know, instead of using nickel, we're going to use cobalt, or like, you know, like just, but you have to understand the elements. You have to understand the makings of, and I feel like that's back to relationships and it being, I just love the way you said it, back to relationships and kind of being that like human technology that's very special to us and organic to us. I think thinking about like relationships and how they're about to change or how they are changing, it's not just about okay, I got to bring Big Mama into 2025 or 2026, right? The way Big Mama did it is it's going to become a archival sort of like, way of old, even though there's like wisdom that can come forward. But I also have to be very, very in touch with and on the ground with the way that things are shifting now and what are the new sort of needs of relationships or the new ways of doing relationships. Yeah. Okay, fine. I'm not even going to resist the fact that chatbots are becoming part of your relational sort of ecosystem, how you might start to understand yourself or create an identity or maybe even like practice dating or, have somewhere to go. Maybe if I don't resist it so much, like, because I have a lot of critiques about it, let me just say that first and foremost. But also maybe if I kind of like approach, why is that happening? Right? Is there something that's been privatized in your sort of like development or shamed that you feel like the best way for me to express it is where no one will know or where I can have complete control over the existence of it so I can delete that chat even though no data is really deleted. But it's like, let me unpack why you think of that as a better solution rather than pushing on you that like human to human is better. Right. And then I can understand the process. And then I can maybe I can make that chatbot solution better for you. Maybe I can make that agentic AI better for you, more safer for you, more developmentally in service of you, whatever, right? Rather than just kind of throwing the idea out. And I'm not saying that's even what you were saying, but I think that I like what you were saying about there's a strong starting point of get involved with the process.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and tinker. I think yes, get involved with the process, tinker, and I think I completely agree with. I mean, at least the first part of what you say, like, which I think is, what are the conditions that have led to a situation which you are feeling it necessary to chat with the chatbot, right? I mean, it's what does that look like? Why? What kind of dispossession has had to happen? And how is the introduction of this technology becoming a solve for that? And so I had this great conversation with a reading group about our book a couple weeks ago. I was actually sitting on the floor at NeurIPS, which is the big AI conference that happens every year. And after I just got out of a workshop and was in a reading group, and something that we were talking about was something that we say on the show, which is like ridicule as praxis. It's kind of about like and I think it's more about like, when a company comes out with something or a university or some institution, you should make fun of it. It's like this is silly. What are you doing here? But like, if you're trying to do that with like a person that's relying on it, like shame is not an effective organizing tactic.
Sure.
Right? Like I was having this conversation. This is TMI, and my mom would be mad at if I said it. But like, I was having this conversation with my mom yesterday. She was trying to get my sister to do something, and I was like, "You're not going to get her to do something if you just yell at her, like, or you just shit. Like, that's not. She's an adult. Like, that's not going to work. Maybe that worked like when she was a kid,
right?
But like, that's not going to work now. You need to learn more about the conditions that have led the person to then seek that techno-solutionism, right?
And that's a part of meeting them where they are.
Yeah, meeting them where they are. Okay, and that to me, and getting back to labor, is an organizing conversation. That's organizing 101. Like, I don't say, if I'm trying to organize a union, or it doesn't even have to be a union, if I'm trying to organize you towards something, I don't come in and say, hey, listen, numbnuts, the union is going to fight for you, and and you need to get over your fucking self and your self-servedness, because we're fighting for the same thing. They go, you have insulted my intelligence, called me numbnuts, you think you know better than me, why are you doing that? The organizing conversation you need to have is, somebody that is probably, maybe antagonistic, maybe even ambivalent, because most people, I think, are ambivalent. They'll come in and like, yeah, I've been using it, like, I think it helps with this, but it, makes some silly mistakes. And I'm like, okay, well, why are you using it, and they were like, well, my boss is laden me with all this kind of work. I really want to just get to the fun stuff. I want to get to the writing. I don't like to write emails. It's not, and it's sort of like, okay, well, what is that? Like, well, why are you laden with that work? Why is that? Why is that the case? And there's an essay by Dave Graeber called "Bullshit Jobs." I don't know if you're familiar with this essay. It's
No.
about like Dave Graeber passed away a few years ago as an anarchist theorist, anthropologist. He has a book on debt. He has a famous essay that's like "Bullshit Jobs," and he's like, most jobs that we have are bullshit. They like you could do without them. And to some degree, like one is like maybe that's right. Like some people view their jobs as bullshit. It's just something to do. But like many people see their jobs as valuable. And like, and I think there's something. That essay, I don't think is. I think it's funny. I think it's got some pieces which make sense, but there's certain pieces where I'm like, the piece where I think it's missing is that I don't think it acknowledges, I think, the dignity of work and really the idea about how work can still be important, even if maybe in the economy of jobs, it's not like that important. I mean, and certain people think I know certain people think their job, there's variation in how people view their jobs, right? And this is going to sound very funny, but like I value work very highly, but I hate to work. Like
No, yeah,
like
yeah.
it's just, and it's more just because I'm very tired all the time. And that's part of me is trying to figure out how to navigate that.
Well, I think it's the same thing to kind of like for people who enjoy athletics. Like a lot of people love game day but hate practice.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
yeah, very much in that. I mean, it's game day actually makes me very nervous. I play roller derby, so like I'm also like,
wait, the one that's like not too far from here. I heard that there was one that was like in San Mateo or something.
Maybe there's actually a league in Redwood City. Yeah, it's called Peninsula Roller Derby. I don't. Yeah, they're a different league. I play with Bay Area Derby.
Okay.
And but I mean, I think there's so like the bullshit jobs thing is one thing, but it's also like even if you have a bullshit job, even if you acknowledge you have a bullshit job, like even if that's a frame that you accept, like there's still a way in which you're being pressured at that job to do things. And like, even if you don't think the job should exist, like what is leading to the job being pressured in the way it is that you have to find or have to have a tech solution, aspect of it. And it's not to say that technology is useless. I mean, I'm a computer nerd. I have a degree in computer science, but it's also the fact that if you have this foisted on you or maybe even use it yourself, what has led to that condition? And I kind of think about this in the same way that abolitionists think about technology. I kind of have an abolitionist view of technology, which is why have we come to that position of, in the police abolition view, like why are we in this situation where we have needed police in this scenario? What have police, what in the institution of policing in the US, how did that come about? How it has its roots in slave patrols. I mean, all going back on that history. The same with prison abolition, and in certain technologies. I mean, to me, large language models is a type of bossware. It is a thing that is about power centralization, about knowledge centralization, where knowledge centralization ought not to be a goal. I mean, it was built on stolen labor, stolen data.
Thank you for saying
stolen everything. Non-consentful data theft. It takes so much energy. So I think it's more like in that's where I'm, the kind of second view of, how could we think about this? Well, in building different chatbots or different types of automation. There might be a frame in which automations can be built that are community controlled, that are controlled, that are for community benefit. And I think beyond control, it's also thinking about what that centralization is doing for us and how the conditions have led to that. And so I think that's, that's, we're at a place there where I think it's really, I think those are hard conversations, and it's a much longer conversation to have.
Yeah.
But, it is coming back to process, coming back to work, coming back to organizing, and coming back to how we relate to each other and have that conversation. And I mean, I think that's the the evergreen wisdom of Big Mama, and like knowing everybody and trying to understand their needs, and understanding that is a relational technology. And I mean, that's something I'm in awe of, of people like Big Mama, that it comes naturally.
And Big Papa.
And Big Papa, yeah.
Your father seemed to kind of have it in the end there with he
was, had a complicated relationship with him. And so, not perfect, but definitely where those relations are, those are the important technologies. And I mean, I think those are the things to hone. Yeah,
I know you got to run soon, but one thing that you really made me think about there was I swear I've like said this so many times, but like language is not, I mean, it's obviously a double-edged sword, but one of the things that I've been trying to drive home with people that really kind of spurred on this podcast, because like I can't say this at work, but I remember when I told my boss I was working at Asana. Asana is a task management sort of like productivity sort of thing.
We use it at my job actually.
I told her, I said the reason that we are seeing declines in sales and and really tied it back to revenue, I said was because this is a colonial product. And before we had LLMs, because this is I used to work for them before they started with their AI stuff and AI got really big, I told them, I said, all you've done is you've taken a ledger. I was like, the history of ledgers and commodification and the process of imperialism and colonialism, and one of the first things you do when you go to a land that you want to kind of like rule is you do two things. One, you discourage the local language, right? And you bring in your language, which that's kind of what an LLM is doing now. Even prompt engineering is almost like speak this language, not your own natural language. And then the second thing you do is you dehumanize or you objectify, and you do that, number one, or at least what we've seen in the past with not even just chattel slavery, but even before then, is you make a record of things. As soon as you make a record of things, memory plays a role, sort of simplifying plays a role, but you put people into rows and columns. That's why I fucking hate Excel. I hate Google Sheets. I hate Asana. I hate all of them, because what they've done is they've taken something so complex, such as relationships or the interconnectedness that human beings have with their environment, and you've put it into a row and a column. And you expect that the smallest or the lowest of workers at that organization is going to embrace this tool when it is literally for Big Brother. You fucking kidding me? I don't want to work here because you can't even admit that the fact that this is a colonialistic tool. And I was like, and they're like, well, Cassandra, like maybe you shouldn't say that. And I was like, don't worry, honey, I'm putting in my 2 weeks in a second. Like, I see through it, right? And I'm like, and you'll never get sales because you need ground up adoption. And guess what? The people don't love it. The people don't love it.
It's true.
The managers do.
I have an admission. I love spreadsheets. Despite the colonial origins, the violent origins of spreadsheets, I honestly love them. And I'm slightly ashamed to say it, but but it's also like, but I think it's also speaks to, I mean, the impulse to quantify is colonial. I mean, that impulse, and you don't have to go you have to go very, you don't have to go 50 years back to talk about eugenics and statistics, right? And in William Shockley, just at Palo Alto, Stanford, like all of that, and
the farm.
The farm,
the farm,
the
that's
farm,
what they call it.
the farm, like Stanford, Shockley, eugenicist, creator of the semiconductor, and social statistics. I mean, you don't have to go too far to talk about Charles Spearman and Francis Galton and all these, social statistics was invented to find group-based differentiations of people by mental ability and race. And then a race had to be constructed, right? And the thing that I really want to highlight and raise up from what you said, which I think is so insightful, is that colonialism doesn't start with the lash, doesn't start with the gun, starts with culture, starts with the tongue, starts with the record,
starts with relationships,
and starts with relationships.
Exactly what you said.
Yeah,
it's like
yeah,
boom, and then to not look at what's happening right now is, I think people feel the threat, but they don't know it because they don't know history. But some of them do, but like the parallels between, I'm not saying that we're being colonized in the same way. I'm probably going to say some things off camera, but like, but there is a striking sort of like parallel to the first instances of power dynamics shifting and group dynamics shifting to what we're seeing right now with AI and language. So I got to wrap this up, but thank you so much for coming to just talk about even what was on your heart as far as labor and the conversation that is kind of bubbling up from, the technology discussion, but also just, what does that really mean in the more tangible realms of the world? And I also just want to shout out your book, The AI Con, co-author, Dr. Alex Hanna. I'm so excited to just be able to just have this moment and discuss. We didn't get as much into wisdom, but I think there was a lot of wisdom in there, especially around labor and why this moment matters and why we should continue to bring that critical lens.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Cassandra. This is an incredible conversation.